So, Harry tells me you're quite the host. I'm somewhat of a podcaster myself, and I am Joseph.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Joe.
And welcome to the Background Noise Podcast. Awful intros aside, we are ready to go and talk about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man Trilogy, starting with Spider-Man in 2001, Spider-Man 2 in 2004, and Spider-Man 3 in 2007. Did I get my ears right?
That sounds right to me.
All right,
I
yeah.
just feel old.
Close enough. Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
I'm
you
not-
feel old. You feel old.
2007. That was just like a few years ago, right?
I was the right age to be a youth when the first one came out.
I think I remember seeing number 3 in theaters. I know it's like, oh, we saw Spider-Man 3 in theaters. But, again, being 1 years old,
Yeah.
I think the first time I saw Spider-Man was like on TV for the first one. That was a lot of fun. But anyway, before we get into actually our first experiences with the Spider-Man, well, at least the movies, we can talk about first Spider-Man experiences another time. This is part 1 of a 3-part kind of series in Background Noise, where we're going to be talking about the different eras of Spider-Man in film. Starting off with the Raimi ones, then going on to the Mark Webb. Again, can't believe they got someone named Mark Webb to direct Spider-Man movies. It's just
It's right there.
It's almost too silly. But anyway, the Mark Webb ones next week, and then I'm just gonna say MCU Spider-Mans, because there's been like a couple different directors, right, for those. But
that's actually been all the same. I want to say his name's John Watts. He's directing all 3.
Oh, okay. Well, then the Watts Spider-Man films on the same week as No Way Home is releasing in theaters.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Check it out.
Hopefully it doesn't suffer from Spider-Man 3-2-itis.
I actually meant our upcoming episodes. I hope the new one's good. I meant check out the upcoming Spidey-Mania episodes. Awesome.
Oh yeah, check those out. Definitely, those are
going to be great, no matter what happens.
Now we'll begin the ASMR portion of the video. What the heck?
It was worth it. It was worth it. It sold my soul for good audio quality.
What did it cost you?
That's
my soul. Didn't you hear the inputting?
Oh, you can't do this to me. You know how much I've sacrificed?
There it is.
Yes, there we go. Now we're in the right mode.
Let's just get it out, and let's just get the memes out while we can. Palm of the hand in the sun of my palm power. What?
The power of my palms in the sun of my hand.
There it is. Yep,
that's the line, right?
Close enough.
As you can see, we are all very well versed in the many admittedly campy, but also very quotable lines from the Raimi trilogy. But I kind of want to know, when's the first time you guys saw Spider-Man? Because again, we were all pretty young, and I don't know if I speak for everybody, but Spider-Man was my bread and butter as a kid. It kind of still is, because it's fun. But yeah, love Spider-Man. Love the movie. Got some fond memories, but what about you guys?
I guess I'll go first.
Go, Jack.
Let's see. I watched 1 and 2 probably around the time 3 came out. I was probably around 7 or 8, maybe a little younger when I first saw both of those. And remember loving them. Thought they were great. Probably watched those a lot as a kid. I remember when Spider-Man 3 came out, getting 1 or 2 of the McDonald's Happy Meal toys. So never actually saw 3. My parents were good enough parents that they didn't want me seeing that because they knew how bad it was. And so I was thankfully shielded from that film for many years until I want to say late middle school, early high school. We were at my grandfather's condo and was on TV. So like, you know what, I'll finally give it a watch. And I realized I had not been missing anything. So it was pretty mad, and we'll get into that. And so since that's the only time I've actually seen that film in its entirety. Since then, I found somebody who after the third film, they released an editor's cut, and somebody decided to take that and make a fan edit from that. And then somebody decided to take both that fan edit and the editor's cut and sort of combine them into this thing they call the editor's redemption. And so when I've revisited the film, I've watched that, and it has made it much more of a bearable watch.
Much less terrible.
Wow.
Much less terrible.
Much less terrible.
Still not on that same level as 1 and 2, but tolerable.
I mean, considering the source material, considering what you have to work with, it'd be hard to do that, right? It'd be hard to get 3 up to that quality.
Yeah.
And even then, I feel like... Oh, go ahead, Joe, actually.
No, go ahead. You finish your thought, and then I'll say when I started watching.
Sure thing. I was going to say that even then, it's like, how can you improve upon perfection? And I know that's kind of... That's kind of hyperbole, but there's been a couple different sources that have said Spider-Man is just the perfect superhero movie, and it's like, I tend to agree with them. Even if Spider-Man 3 would have been good, or if it was closer to the editor's redemption cut, it would have still not been as good as Spider-Man 2. And of course, we'll get into that. But sure. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I don't even remember the first time I watched them. They have been so ingrained into my consciousness as a human being. Because I distinctly remember going as Spider-Man for Halloween a couple years in a row. And so I had to be like the 10, 11-ish age. So I had to have seen the movies before then, which 10 for me would have been 2006. So the first 2 would have been out, but not 3, right? That's how the timeline works out.
That sounds right.
So I'm pretty sure the first time I saw them was probably one of those like TV edit cuts that are where they've cut out some of the stuff so they can fit it into a 2-hour TV session with commercials. And as a kid, as a 10-year-old kid, you're just kind of enjoying watching Spider-Man. I do not know. I could not tell you the first time I actually went and watched the movies through all the way at the proper version, because I have been watching these movies for so long that it's just like it's part of my subconscious at this point. Like you said, I think Joseph, you said that Spider-Man is your bread and butter. Like Spider-Man in general as a character is a thing that has been in my consciousness for as long as I have had thoughts about superheroes. So
that is some good stuff right there. Some good Spider-Mania right there. That's what we like to hear.
Yep.
Well, going back to even just like watching the cartoons and whatnot before the movie, Spider-Man is just like kind of out of I guess all the Marvel characters really. He's the one that's just kind of really big in the cultural just zeitgeist of the past 30 years? 40, really?
Something around that. Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably easily the biggest 3 superheroes of the modern era are Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man. Pretty easily. Yes.
Superman, Batman, Spider-Man are the big 3.
Yeah.
Who are iconic characters. Because there's a difference. We've had this conversation, and we've had this conversation separately with other people not on the podcast, that like DC does iconic characters and Marvel does realistic characters, like real people. But the thing about Spider-Man is, yes, he's a person dealing with real people problems, as in, being absolutely flat broke for 90% of his life.
What is it?
And having to deal with high school, and having to deal with getting a job, and having to deal with all this other stuff. But he's also, despite having to deal with realistic problems, he's also the most iconic of the Marvel characters. Like, he's the person who most fulfills the role as an icon of what a hero can be.
Right.
So, and I think he might be the most iconic character. He might be the most iconic superhero, period. Right? Because all of the problems that, other than the problem of sometimes getting beaten up by flying goblin men, all of the problems that Spider-Man deals with are problems that are pretty much universal to humanity.
Oh, like, sure, yeah. It's way... Right.
Good. Good.
I was going to say it's way easier of the big three, it is so much easier to relate to Spider-Man and his problems he struggles with as Peter Parker than it is to relate to Bruce Wayne, who's a billionaire, or Clark Kent, who is, massively strong and, a chiseled perfection of a human and, works a day job at a successful newspaper company. It's like, very hard to relate to something like that versus a struggling kid in high school.
Yep. Because pretty much everybody was at one point a child dealing with growing up and coming of age. And I mean, you can read into the powers as a metaphor for growing up, right? And you becoming someone that you don't fully understand yet and having to grow into that.
Sure.
And it's also, who hasn't, had at least the opportunity to step up and do something, or it's not be a superhero or anything, but it's again, the time worn mantra, great power comes great responsibility. It's what is it? Power comes in many forms, and so does responsibility. It's kind of just a universal message there, and that's why I think that it gets translated so well in the first movie. So why don't we talk about the movies now? Because it's as fun as it is to talk about Spider-Man as a character, and again, he's so universally recognizable and almost universally kind of I would say universally liked. Is can't think any kid that doesn't like Spider-Man. Why don't we run through not just the first one, but all the films, and maybe pick out two moments from them that we consider our favorites. Let's start with Jack. Go, Jack. Do it now.
Fine. Okay. Well, one of the first scenes that comes to mind for me, two, is first off just one of my all-time favorite superhero films and probably one of my favorite films in general. If I were to go back and look at the films that came out this year, I'd probably still say it's my favorite of that year. Just it hits the mark on just so many levels, and I love revisiting it again and again. The first one's great too, but just how this film builds on the first is great. But to talk about specific scenes, let's just talk about scenes. I absolutely love the train scene where he's fighting Doc Ock, just the entire thing of the battle there, and then at the end where he collapses and all people on the train carry him, and are just shocked that he's a kid. Just that entire scene is it's a very emotional, very well done scene. And we get a lovely little cameo from Phil Lamar, who's an awesome voice actor. Thought you'd like that, Joseph. If you didn't catch that, figure you'd appreciate that. Yeah, so that was cool. But that's still one of my probably all-time favorite action scenes, especially if you watch the Spider-Man 2 Extended. It's a minute or two extra of content, and it's great. So that's one. If I had to choose another one, easily the most terrifying scene. Are we going to take turns doing scenes?
Let's do round robin, maybe.
Sure, works for me.
Yeah, sounds good. Go ahead, Joe.
Which I think I'm going to steal the scene that you're going to pick for your second. So you'll have, because based on that brief description, but not so much a Spider-Man scene, but one of the best scenes in any of the three movies is Doc Ock on the table.
Oh
yes, yep. Got it.
That's Sam Raimi playing into his horror movie strengths,
very much.
Like from the perspective of the audience, you're kind of seeing through the perspective of the arms as they're killing people, and yet you don't identify with the arms, and it's great. It's watching them sweep around the room, throwing people around as you're watching the terror. A guy is trying to grab a chainsaw off of the table.
The really close zooms.
Yeah, oh man, it is an excellent scene. It is actually a little bit unnerving.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Excellently done. One of the problems, well, we'll talk about this later, but one of the problems in 3 is there aren't scenes like that, really. There aren't any of the horror of, because the reason that scene is powerful is because we know Otto Octavian, right? We know him as a decent person, and now he's attached to these monsters, and you're seeing just how monstrous these things are. And so like now the juxtaposition is laid there of this person seemed like a pretty decent guy, and now he's attached to these monstrous things, and we saw just how monstrous they could be. We watched them tear these people apart mercilessly, uncaringly, like, and then that sets up the fundamental problem going forward in the movie is the juxtaposition between like the man you're supposed to be and giving in to just the things that you want, really. So
that is another good transition to one of my favorite ones, which I suppose is not really a scene, as it is not really a collection of scenes. It's all of Spider-Man. What? No, it's not that. No, it's actually kind of the transformation that Norman Osborn goes through to become the Green Goblin, and it's not just the back to formula scene, which is really good because it's
back to formula.
Yes. Other than that, which is again another great line, it's just kind of goes to that, like you said about the person you become and the person you're supposed to be. Like Norman Osborn is in the comics, he's just a kind of a horrible person before he becomes Green Goblin, and in this you can tell that he's just a businessman and a scientist who wants to. I mean, he wants to keep control of his company, but he also wants to, still be a good father figure and a good father to like his son and his surrogate son and Peter. And then just the minute he takes the serum, he's gone. It's after that it's Goblin putting on the face of. Well, sort of Goblin putting on the face.
That's not true, right? Because he actually he's degenerating.
Fighting.
Yeah, he's degenerating over the course of the movie, and that's why it's so compelling, right? It was because it's not a switch, and then he's suddenly Goblin. He is the good bits of the man that were there are being eaten up by Goblin over the course of every single scene you see him in.
Right.
Till the very end, which the last fight is going to be the one that I narrow it down to. Because well, not to mention, like I always like the fact that it that one pumpkin bomb kind of blew off part of Spider-Man's mask. Well, first of all, I thought that was brutal, and like the scene where there's like what is it, where the Green Goblin's in the burning building is what actually. I was actually scared of this movie for the longest time. So Sam Raimi, a very good horror director, because he scared little me to the point where I couldn't look at a figure of the Green Goblin that my friend had. I asked him to like put it in his closet or something. It's like I can't look at him; he's too scary.
Oh wow! And
again, 6.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
sure, but still,
yeah. The ending fight scene for Spider-Man 1, just in terms of choreography, effects, just that whole fight culminating, and you see the last bit of Norman Osborn go away just before he does die after being again kind of brutally impaled on his own glider.
Yep.
Oof. Yeah.
I actually think I've heard people criticize, like, there's the cutaway, like the glider's coming in, and then there's the cutaway to his face and him going and then him getting stabbed, and I think that's actually it's done on purpose, because otherwise the scene is too brutal, right? Like
I agree. I think it's perfect. Yeah.
You need that little bit of levity to remind you this is still a superhero movie. So, but Jack,
I think that's just I think Raimi just has a very good sense of humor, and I think that just whether it be something super obvious or something little like just him saying it's just that light addition of humor to mix with just such a brutal scene. I think it works so well, and I think these films are very funny, whether it be the campiness or actual funny scenes. And I don't know if that actually goes into a favorite scene or not, but that's just a touch I wanted to make. I think Raimi, as good as he is with horror, he mixes comedy in with his films very well, also. And I think these films are a great example. His subtle comedy is very good. Yes,
it's almost like he should make a comedy, a horror comedy or something,
right? Somebody should tell him that.
No way. Man.
Wow, what a crazy idea. Anyway,
a groovy idea even.
I'm trying to think if I have another scene in mind. I mean, the train scene is just solid action scene. That's hard. Um, One of my favorite casting choices was Aunt May. This is still probably my favorite Aunt May of the three we've gotten. I think she just nails the role. And so both the scene where Peter is talking about what happened with Uncle Ben, where you have that scene, and then later you have the scene where they're having like the yard sale or something, and you have Aunt May talking with Peter about, there's a hero in all of us and all that. That's a very touching scene. I think she just nails that scene, and I think it's a very touching scene. And you pretty much get the idea that, even though they don't touch on it in the third, unfortunately, you pretty much get the idea that Aunt May knows he is Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think those to switch from something more action heavy to something a bit more of a heartfelt scene. I think all the scenes between Peter and Aunt May are always great, and of course, the scene in the first one with Uncle Ben is just fantastic. And when they reference that in 2 as well, I think are just great. Both the Aunt May and Uncle Ben in this trilogy are still my favorite from any of the other films they've done where they try to have those characters. These are still like the gold standard for me.
Yeah, not only do they, and again, comic movie, it's an adaptation. They can change things. It was like, I think as much as they were like, oh yeah, Peter's aunt and uncle, they were also still very much kind of like these, not really. I'm not gonna say like these grandfather and grandmotherly figures, but they kind of were. So I think they were able to pull that off well, and also able to pull off the fact it's like they're Peter's role models. They're essentially his parents, and yeah, I think there's all the scenes between her and Peter are pulled off pretty well without being kind of melodramatic or sappy, because it's I say that because other parts of the movie are, some of the emotions are a little overwrought, if
Just a
you will.
little bit. Just a touch.
Just a little. They pulled the kind of the genuineness of that relationship out very well.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm gonna take us back into action again.
Hit us with some action.
But this is an important, again, this is from 2, because 2 has all, like, we could just say all of 2 and that's the best scene,
which is true.
But the point where like Peter has rejected being Spider-Man, and he's actively not being Spider-Man, and then he sees the burning building, and I think there's a kid inside, and he, as Peter, chooses to go in and save the kid. And there's a realization that he can't not be a hero. Like, he can't not be the person who goes in and tries to save people. There's a couple of moments in there where I thought were unintentionally funny, because it seems like Peter is realizing, man, if I only had my powers, this would be so much easier. Like, I wouldn't have to deal with hanging off of this cliff or hanging off of this floor into the lower floor. I could just flip my way across. But it's also a very emotional and impactful scene into who he is as a person, where even knowing or assuming that he doesn't have his powers, he doesn't have the superhuman ability to save people, he still chooses to go in and risk actually risking himself. Not in the, oh, I'm a superhero, so it's not really that much of a risk to me. No, he actually, like, he's just a man at that point, and he still runs into a burning building to save some kids. And then it hits you with there's some poor sap who is up on the upper floor and nobody got to him in time. And he's like, yes, I made the right choice, but my choice to reject being Spider-Man meant someone else died that didn't happen, that maybe I could have saved them as well. As I think that's very, like, the dual nature of that, both the fact that he chooses to go in and risk himself, and the fact that because of previous choices that he's made to reject being Spider-Man, someone else dies because of that. So
Yeah, it's funny. Funny you mentioned that scene because that was actually one I'd written down and I'd forgotten about. But it's funny because I've watched a couple people's takes on just them talking about Spider-Man 2, and that's a couple times they've said they don't like that scene. They said, "Oh, that's just them trying to do something from the first one, and it doesn't work." I personally, I think it's a lot of what you said, Joe. I think it's a very nice touch, not only a callback to the first one, but him like, hey, I can still be Peter Parker and still do this, right? This will still work. And if I have to, I can still do it. I can still do what I want and still save people now and again. And just the realization that he can't. And I thought that was an excellent addition to that scene was an excellent addition, not only being a callback, but I think it was a very intentional scene that I think worked very well to prove the point that no, you can't still be Spider-Man and Peter Parker. You pretty much have to choose.
yeah, yep.
And well, my scene's actually not a Spider-Man scene, really. My last one. Yeah. I think what is it? The reason I kind of like all the still, despite all the campiness, still like all the Spider-Mans is that, and the reason they're still kind of these the superhero movie goals, or at least the old school superhero movie goals, is because Raimi does the villains very well, or at least the ones he's interested in. Because I'm gonna bring up Spider-Man 3. Don't throw any rocks at me. Don't throw any through the.
I have the rock at the ready. You better have a really good explanation here.
Put it down. We've got glass. That's gonna go out and it's gonna hit Otto Octavius' wife or something. Okay. Anyway, reference time.
Joe Jr.
That was a tortured
cry.
reference. Kind of like her death.
Ooh. But anyway, I'm actually talking about Spider-Man 3: The Birth of the Sandman.
Okay.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
I'm gonna hard pass on that. No.
Oh, what do you mean? I think it's great. I think it's great on a technical. I don't have too many things to say about the technical stuff of this film because, well, most of it's already been said. It's really good. Just very, very nice wire work, amazing like camera work and whatnot. But I think for 2007, that was great use of visual effects.
Okay,
and
I'm going to give you
says a great amount of thing about a character that maybe gets a little too much screen time because he's not given enough screen time. If that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm not going to 100% back you up on this one. So I'm not going to throw the rock all the way. I might just touch you with it.
I don't need your backing, but go ahead.
I don't like the Sandman character, and I especially don't like what they did with Uncle Ben. We can talk about that, but that as a scene is a well done scene. That is a pretty scene. The realization of what he has become, I think, is a very well shot scene. I will give it that.
No, it's not. It's actually really bad because if you listen, like I watched this. I actually just watched the movie again last night in preparation. I was watching it the whole trilogy in preparation for this episode. It's not, and the reason it's not is because the music is like soaring and triumphant and heroic sounding. Whereas when you cut to the villain creation scene in 2, Doc Ock on the table, it is a horror scene, right? It is played for horror because it is horrifying. Like what is happening to the good man is horrifying. But here, if you listen to the music, it sounds triumphant and heroic. When what's happening is this person is getting demolecularized and getting turned into a monster, and that should be played for horror, and it's not. So I strongly disagree because, and I actually, no, maybe the shot of the scene, but the execution of how the film portion is done, maybe that is good for that. But then there's a contrast in tones between the audio and the visual, which. So I'm gonna hard disagree on calling that a great scene.
We are talking about the one where he's like trying to reform himself, right?
Well, okay, I guess that's a good.
I'm talking about that one.
That's what I was thinking of. That's what I was thinking of.
When he's trying to like get himself out of the same. Yeah, before that, that's just kind of that's actually the horrifying when he's getting disintegrated.
All right, so I misunderstood.
Oh yeah, no, we're talking about when he's trying to pull himself back together.
Yeah,
I will say that scene actually is I mean, I wish Sandman didn't exist, and actually, and I wish he wasn't in the movie. But that scene is pretty well done for him as a like pseudo protagonisty character. I was criticizing the demolecularization scene where he gets turned into Sandman, not him trying to pull himself back together. So
that was pretty conflicting. Yeah. But
okay. All right, so now that we're all on the same page about which scenes we're talking about.
Yay!
All right, we made it. We're here. Yeah. So yeah, I like it, and it's good, and you're all dumb, and the show's over. Okay, bye.
What?
But,
all right, no.
And well, we lost Joseph. What do we do now?
But he's still talking.
All right. Well, the good thing is I'm still here. Surprise. And well, I like it. Well, Joe, you brought up the score in before. It's like, yeah, that's kind of clashing, and I always thought that was kind of, this doesn't seem right. But afterwards, it's just the score, the visual effects, just kind of if you just had that scene, it would paint like a very, very different picture of like the Sandman that we get. And I'll agree that kind of, I guess retconning the fact that he didn't kill, or that he did kill Uncle Ben is like that's just like, all right, we don't know what to do with him. He killed Uncle Ben. But didn't we wrap that up last movie? It's like,
that
I don't know, Uncle Ben.
That whole thing doesn't need to be there. Like, if are we going into, because we all agree Spider-Man 1 and 2 cinematic masterpieces, the benchmark that all other superhero movies should try to obtain, and probably never will.
Get your rocks ready again, but only Spider-Man 2 in my list.
All right, Spider-Man 2 is definitely better than Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man 1 I very much enjoy.
I still enjoy it, but I got looking back without my rose-tinted glasses, I see some like moments.
Oh yeah, there are a few, that's fair. There's but are we moving into the let's tear apart Spider-Man 3 portion of the podcast, because I think we all have lists.
What is it? I was about to say I've held you all back long enough. I'm gonna say one more thing about the Sandman scene. Just like
sure.
Him pulling himself back together was good visual effects. But again, just starting with like him just being the little rocks. When I was a kid, I didn't realize sand was little rocks. So that's that was educational. Spider-Man 3 is an educational film, actually. So
it's a bit of a stretch.
Quote me on that. Quote it, run it, and I want it on the presses in 5 minutes.
I'd say it's an educational film on how to not do a third Spider-Man film.
Let's get a
yes, it is. That's correct.
Let's make that our next
let's transition into Destroy Spider-Man 3, because it hasn't been done before.
And no one has torn this movie
No
apart.
One's ever done that before, am I right?
Nope.
Let's start on a positive note. I did one thing I liked about Spider-Man 3. Now you two have to do one more too before we get into the admittedly warranted criticisms.
Something we liked about Spider-Man 3?
Yes.
Let's see here. Joe, you go first. Let me think.
Okay. So on the rewatch, I could not stop laughing at Dark Spider-Man being an absolute douche canoe. Like terrible being like just not cool, like thinking that he's cool and being very uncool is well done. I think that perfectly encapsulates Peter Parker having the venom on him, where he thinks that he's better now and he's much worse, and we can see the contrast between who he thinks he is becoming and who he actually is becoming, which culminates in him being an absolutely terrible person to Mary Jane, manipulating Gwen to use her to get at MJ. Like, I mean, it's hard to watch from like an enjoyment perspective, but it perfectly does. I think that actually is a really good way to represent him becoming this worse version of himself.
I guess if I had to choose something I like, the big problem, and we'll get into this, the big problem, and something for me with films is it's usually very easy for me to like a film if I can like the characters, but they do so much with the characters that makes me not like them that's really what drags the film down. So if I choose something I like about this film, the fight scene at the beginning where we see Harry and Peter fighting for the first time, I'd say that's a solid fight scene. I liked that. I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah, from just like from again going technical, I guess from a technical standpoint as an action scene, it's like, yeah, it's fun, but from like the other stuff, it's like, oh, this should have either happened at the very end of the last film, and again, it happens at the very beginning of this one, but it's like, I don't know, maybe this should have been boiled up a little more, and it should have happened in the middle. I don't know. It was very early and jarring. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. So that's primary criticism is Spider-Man 3 should have been about Harry and Peter. They should have been the two main characters, and they should have been both of them should have been the only villains, because like there's a time when Spider-Man kind of is the villain, right? When he's becoming I don't know, is it Black Suit Spider-Man?
When he's getting envenomed. Ooh.
Envenomed and envenomated. I don't. Let's use envenomated. I love that. Sounds really cool. Like that dynamic between those two characters should have been the main portion of the movie, because there shouldn't have been Sandman. You could argue that there shouldn't. I mean, maybe you need Eddie Brock as like he suffers because of. There's a couple ways you can do the final battle. You can either have it be Spider-Man having been free of Venom fighting Harry as himself, or you can have it be like, Spider-Man still hurts Eddie Brock and Eddie gets the Venom suit, and then Spider-Man has to convince, or Peter has to convince Harry to team up to take on Venom, and that's how they reconcile their differences, and probably Harry still dies. Something like that would still work. You just, as long as you're focusing on the real core problem is Harry and Peter, that's the big change.
Yeah,
Get rid of Sandman completely. I know we there's a couple scenes that are okay with him, and it's an interesting twist, but get rid of him completely. That whole plot line doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I feel like you can almost keep the base of Sandman. You can almost keep him as, if you want to keep him as your side villain, if you want to have a secondary villain in the film, sure, you can do that. But you have to keep the main villain. You can almost be very similar to what it was in 3, where he is the villain that he doesn't take it out on Sandman because he killed Uncle Ben. He takes out his anger on Sandman because he has the symbiote, and it's, channeling all of his angry thoughts and emotions and all of that into that, and we see the outcome of that on how he treats Sandman. Maybe he's just brutally annihilates him, or completely just traps him in this jar of water. I don't know, but
get in this jar
and stay there. But like, if you want to keep him as the side villain, as the person who, or the villain that basically makes Peter realize, he's gone too far, sure. But the main villain and the main story should be between Harry and Peter, and whether or not you want to make Harry be the Green Goblin. If you're making be the Green Goblin, he has to have a better costume, though, because that costume was trash in this film. It was so bland. Or make him become Venom, and then you have like a Spider-Man fighting a Spider-Man. So, I mean, that would have been kind of cool.
That would have.
But Harry was never Venom in the comics. Actually, I don't know if that's true or not.
As far as I know, I don't think he was, but I think it would have worked fine, and I wouldn't have gotten too mad. I would have maybe held the rock up, but I wouldn't have thrown it if they've done it right. So
yeah, I mean, they already have Peter can shoot webs out of his arms as opposed to having the web slingers. It's like, you make him one more change to canon, not that big of a deal.
Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I think another major problem with that movie is the problem of MJ and Peter's relationship. because and the reason isn't because of something organic in the characters. Like the reason that they have problems is because MJ is having problems and Peter is not listening to her and is just kind of being stuck up in his own little world. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not related to him as a character. That's the problem is created because Hollywood writers don't know how to write characters and relationships. Because if you notice, they get together at the very, very end of 2. At the very end of Spider-Man 2, MJ has chosen Peter and they're going to be in a relationship together. And you get like a brief scene of them in the little spider hammock, it kind of spending some time together. And then after that, it's just all fighting and miscommunication and problems. There is no them being in a relationship together, handling problems as a couple that has some like time together they've gotten to know each other. They are working together, which would have been much more interesting to me as a viewer. It would have been
Sure.
so much cooler to have a couple who are actually getting along and actually seem to like each other and actually make sense as a couple for why they are together. Whoa, what a crazy idea. What a crazy idea to have actual characters who are in relationships and it's like healthy and good for both of those characters. What a wild thought.
But Joe, conflict.
Okay, but but here the problem is if you have the conflict between MJ and Peter and the conflict between Peter and Harry, like they kind of detract from each other. Or if you have like MJ and Peter work as a couple, and then Peter gets the Venom symbiote and he becomes angry and self-destructive, and that causes problems in his relationship. Where it's obvious that the two of them work together normally, but now all of the bad emotions in Peter are being amplified because that's one of the things the symbiote does. And then you're actually even more invested in that relationship because you saw that it works and you want Peter to get rid of it because it's making him a worse person and it's negatively impacting the people he cares about, as opposed to the movie we saw where like he kind of already bad at relationships anyways. You're like, well, he's already kind of a terrible person. I don't care if he's in a relationship or not. He's already terrible.
Right.
So.
Oh yeah, I feel like that. Just instead of things being bad to begin with, it's good to establish, like the rest of the films established like that. Well, the second one did it best in the terms of the dichotomy between Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but each one of them's had its own like kind of split in the status quo, as it were. What is
Yes.
it? Yeah. So
I know exactly what you mean. Yep.
Yep. In that being not very clear. I'm not going to say not very developed. If anything, it was developed. It was just sped by so quickly. It's like they did a whole movie's worth of development in the first 30 minutes or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but I completely agree about the relationships. When it came to 3, it did not feel like a natural progression for the characters. It would be different if all the conflict had started when he put on the black suit, but they already have it happening when he doesn't have it. They just have him being cocky and oblivious to what's going on with Mary Jane, and Mary Jane is just sad for half of it. But yeah, it didn't make sense, and that's not what we've seen from the relationship thus far leading up to this film. And so it just felt like they put it in for conflict's sake. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. Now that we've torn a hole in Spider-Man 3's web, well, do we have any more? I mean, I'm sure we have plenty more comments.
Oh, I mean, I could keep talking about it.
But we're not going back to. No, this bad.
We're not going back to formula.
No more.
I'll make the joke.
That was a bad one. That wasn't even relevant to the conversation. Anyway, okay, trivia game. This one's actually good this time, audience and fellow hosts, because I've put more than 3 minutes of effort into it. I've put 5. Okay.
Whoa.
Anyway,
Progress.
Yeah. All right. Well,
progress.
I'm sure the super fans will know that this trilogy, well, super fans, maybe even the casual fans, because this is kind of like one of these things is a big bit of like, I guess movie star Hollywood trivia or something, that this trilogy is kind of known for many like other now kind of well-known actors almost being cast for roles in like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 with Leonardo DiCaprio, who's very good friends with Tobey Maguire. They what is it? They grew up being child actor buddies together. And Leonardo DiCaprio was almost cast as Spider-Man, and that's kind of a lot of people know that as like, oh, he couldn't do it because he was filming or he was about to film. No, it's there's one of these things about filming. He wasn't able to commit to a multi-movie like filming schedule. Was that one? And,
I see.
and that's good for him because he had some big things from 2001 to 2007. But anyway, yeah. Well, gentlemen, I've got a handful of characters and the actors that they were considered for. I'm gonna need you two to guess and just like ring in with used air quotes for ring in, and this is an audio podcast. Ring in by just like saying your name to kind of like be the first one to guess, and I need you to guess which character these actors go with. And don't worry, all the actors, like actors and actresses, I'm gonna list are gonna be for the same character. So there's not gonna be like two Spider-Man actors and a and a Mary Jane actor in the same one. All right.
Okay, sounds fair.
All right. Let's
I think
start
I understand the
easy.
game.
All righty. Let's start easy with the actors Jude Law, Heath Ledger, Wes Bentley, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Freddie Prinze Jr.
I would assume Spider-Man.
That is correct, Jack. Ding, 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 ding. What is it? You win the pizza from Joe's Pizza for that one. Prizes will be given for individual wins, so don't worry, Joe. You can still catch up.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Pizza time.
I'm just going to tell you, I'm terrible at these kinds of games. First of all, because I'm terrible with names. So Jack is going to get all the points. So.
Oh, he's gonna get the pizza, and he's gonna get the. Well, anyway. All right. Next group of actors: Christopher Walken, Robert De Niro, David Duchovny, I don't know who that is, Ed Harris, Sam Neill, Chris Cooper, and Liev Schreiber. Who is that? Who's the character, I mean?
I don't know. Were they Green Goblin? Or
Oh, I'm afraid not, Joe.
Okay.
I think they're all male actors.
Yes. Yeah, very good, Jack. A little more specific.
Oh, okay.
Human male actors. Yes, you get multiple guesses. Go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I don't know. Does that count as Jack's guess?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go with that.
I don't know. Were they all Uncle Ben?
I'm afraid not. No.
Okay.
They're not Uncle Ben.
All right,
Jack, one more guess, and then we're gonna move on to sudden death with a clue.
All right. With that list of, I'm gonna go Doc Ock.
Very good, Jack. Very nice. Yeah, put the clapping sound effect in there. Yeah.
That was going to be my next guess. So,
oh, you were this close. Again, audio podcast. You didn't see me holding up two fingers very close together. Anyway,
I can imagine it.
Yep. And for that, Jack, you win the power of the sun in the palm of your hand.
Sweet.
All
There's
right.
nothing else I like to do when I'm eating pizza. Hold the power of the sun. That's a perfect meal to me right there.
Yeah,
at least the pizza won't get cold.
That's right.
Exactly. Yep. You gotta keep it warm with the. Anyway, our next
29
list.
minutes, or the sun explodes.
It's a promise, man.
Nicolas Cage, John Travolta, Bill Paxton, Mel Gibson, Jason Isaacs, Robert De Niro, and John Malkovich. I got a little piece of trivia after we figure out who this is for.
I'm gonna guess Green Goblin again.
Yes, Joe.
Right.
He did it, Joe. Yeah.
Good for you, Joe.
Good one, Joe. You got one.
You said Nick Cage, and I was like, okay, that would also have been excellent Green Goblin.
Imagine Nick Cage's facial expressions for the. Oh man. Oh no. Wow. Also, it turns out John Malkovich, who was kind of he was either considered or he auditioned, was in one of the first drafts, and again, this is all hearsay because Spider-Man 4 was it's pretty much just a collection of Hollywood hearsay at this point, but he was originally going to be the Vulture in that film. And again, I feel like it's kind of funny.
I can see that.
I can see it too, because ironically enough, about the age John Malkovich was like there, and I'm not saying he's old or anything, is about the same age that, Michael Keaton was when he played Vulture in the, Homecoming one. So,
that's funny.
That works out pretty well, I think.
That does work. Yeah.
And even before he was considered for Vulture, but even before then, he was supposedly going to go up against Ben Kingsley for the role. Yes, the Ben Kingsley.
Ooh,
Wow.
Gandhi himself.
Yes, indeed. And again, another little trivia bit. You're seeing this sprinkled here and now. A lot of these guys eventually got into the MCU in one way or another. So that's that's kind of funny.
Interesting.
All right, we've got two more. We're cranking up the difficulty here. All right, R. Lee Ermey, Christopher Lloyd, and Dennis Farina.
Let's say Uncle Ben.
Oh, very close, Jack, but I'm afraid no cigar.
We'll find then. I don't smoke anyway.
I'm trying to think of who other prominent male characters are that we need to consider. I don't know. So,
here's a hint for both of you. I've given you a hint just by saying stuff.
Well, I can't make a second guess, can I?
Let's let Joe do a concrete guess before we move back to you.
All right, Joe, you can do it.
I have no clue. I don't even know. I don't even think I recognize the names of the actors you listed off.
So
Christopher Lloyd. That's
a pass.
Christopher Lloyd. Okay. He's the Doc in Back to the Future.
Yes, that's him. And R. Lee Ermey is the drill. The drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket. That's his big role. He's been in a lot of other stuff, but that's the big one.
Okay.
Don't know who Dennis Farina is, but anyway, Jack, your second guess.
Well, you said no cigar, and considering the only person who has a cigar is J. Jonah Jameson, that's going to be my guess.
Well, that's very good. Again, print it. I want it out in 5 minutes because it's the right answer. Very nice. You get a first edition copy of Spider-Man: Hero or Menace from the Daily Bugle. That's coming in the mail, by the way. It'll be fun. Yeah.
The problem with that is nobody is better than J.K. Simmons at being Jameson.
We need before we finish up, we need to loop around to the casting, because this has brought up just the fact that this trilogy is phenomenally cast, with the exception of Topher Grace. Anyway, all right, our last, I say list. This is actually the hardest one because it's only two names: Elisha Cuthbert and Scarlett Johansson.
MJ.
That's afraid not.
Go with the off. What?
I'll give you half a point there because technically one of them was considered. So you get a half point there. You get a half of Sandman in a jar.
Half of no
Don't open it.
I'm going to let Joe guess again because I want him to get all of Sandman in a jar.
All right. Do it, Joe.
I don't know. Gwen Stacy, then.
Yeah.
The extra one.
That's right, the one. Yay. You get the other half. Don't hold them too close. Yep, you get the other half of the jar. I get
the other half of the jar.
Yeah, what is it? I put plastic wrap on it, so you won't get out. So now you get to put it back together. All right. Now,
secret bonus round.
Yep, there it is again. Yep, that's right. Okay. Many prominent directors at the time were also considered to direct the first Spider-Man. Try and name one of them. Now, this is very difficult because you have to have knowledge of directors from 2001 that were either well established or up and coming. So I got 2 hints for you guys. The first one is one of these directors would do a superhero movie 3 years after Spider-Man was released in films. And the other is that another director is known for spooky films that may also involve spiders.
I don't know about those. I do know that James Cameron was initially asked about it.
All right, that is one. Very good, Jack. What about you, Joe? You got any more guesses?
I do not know. Like, I don't know actors. I even know even less about directors. So I am
all right,
not the
I'll
person.
take that. Unfortunately, I'll have to be revoking half of your the other half of your Sandman in a jar
Oh
for
boy.
not being able to answer. But anyway, yeah, that one was pretty tough. But the director for the first hint was Ang Lee, known director of the Hulk from
That's
2004. That wonderful film. Tony Scott, brother of Ridley Scott, may he rest in peace. Not Ridley Scott, Tony Scott. Tony Scott passed away in 2012. Anyway, Tim Burton. That's where the spooky the spooky films that may involve spiders came from. Tim Burton was actually kind of considered for a moment.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Interesting.
Jean de Bont, and don't be sad that you don't recognize his name, because he's the director of Speed, and that's his only good movie, and you can quote me on that one. Roland Emmerich, again, we've kind of got the trifecta of like the big action names from that era. What is it? The director of Speed, Roland Emmerich, and brace yourselves, M. Night Shyamalan.
Of course.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's all for the Raimi Spider trivia game. Dun, 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 play a non-copyright Spider-Man theme here, Jack. All right. Anyway, yeah, that's good. That's good. I hope you all enjoy your prizes, and they'll be coming in the mail sometime. Yes. Ooh,
Yay.
that's a wrap. Clap, 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 clap.
Sure.
Okay, now let's reel back in, and I say I need to reel back in from pick my brain off the floor and go back to the casting of these films. It really is good. We can joke all we want about, like, oh yeah, what is it? Tobey Maguire's playing a high schooler and he's like 30 years old, but it's like he pulls off Peter Parker. He pulls off the dual role of being Peter Parker and Spider-Man very well to me. And it's not just nostalgia talking, because I think I've got good comparisons to. There's been comparisons to, like, oh yeah, Andrew Garfield's the best, like, oh, quippy Spider-Man type.
Wow.
And what is it?
We
Tom
may talk about
Holland's-
that next week.
We will talk about that next week, but it's like, he's the best balance. Tobey Maguire is the best balance, and
That's fair.
J. Jonah Jameson, J.K. Simmons, they're meant to be. Norman Osborn, what is it? Willem Dafoe. He's an amazing actor, and he just kind of brings. Again, he's very hammy. He's having a great time. You can tell.
Yep.
You could tell a lot of people were having a great time filming the first Spider-Man. It was just, you could see from like the behind the scenes stuff. He's chewing up the scenery. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
And he just he's also able to do the dual role of kind of this crazy over the top evil figure, and just this businessman and scientist. And again, I talked about that earlier, but Alfred Molina as Otto Octavius,
Mm-hmm.
words.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Just the villains, and they're very well cast, very well portrayed. It seems a little melodramatic at points, but I can't think of a single miscast other than Topher Grace. Sorry, Topher.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the trilogy, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all know that the actual Venom movies are a cinematic masterpiece, as
Of course.
has been previously
Oscar-worthy.
recorded
Here we go.
on this. Exactly. As has been previously recorded on this very podcast. And so, obviously,
I'm muting Joe now. Go ahead.
Anyone else who isn't,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go on.
any version of Venom that isn't that version of Venom just can't hold a candle to that.
Clearly.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Jack, is he done yet?
Yeah, he's done.
Okay. All right, you're unmuted, Joe.
Well, I I think at this point we can probably give our star rating for the films, which I think should be pretty easy.
Oh, that should be. All right. How about we don't break tradition? Go ahead, Jack.
Fine. Well, I still love watching the first. The first I think is a very well done film. I would give that a solid 9 out of 10 just for what it was. There's some little things here and there, like some CGI here and there doesn't hold up. Just some very little things that, prevent it from being perfection. But for what it is, I think it's still great. Still have a blast watching it. So I give that a 9 out of 10. Spider-Man 2 is still probably one of my top 5 favorite superhero films ever. Maybe top 10, but I think it'd probably pretty easily be top 5. That's 10 out of 10 for me. Just perfect, especially the fact that it's a sequel and had to, live up to the hype of the first one. So still absolutely adore that film. And then the third, I would probably, again, I watched the fan edit. So the fan edit itself, I'd probably give like a 6 or something. So if I'm going back with the original film, I'd probably give that a 5, 6 if it's lucky.
Okay. Let's see. I will do. I think I can give number one. I think I can give Spider-Man 1 and 9. I think I agree with everything Jack said. There's a couple points here and there where it doesn't quite hold up as well, but otherwise a very solid movie, very good message, very good, like not just a story, but the ideas that it's trying to actually convey, as opposed to just being a whoop bang pop wow zippo action movie. And then 2, perfect, 10 out of 10, excellent, solid movie. Go back and rewatch it. I don't. Ironically, it's not me. Ironically, saying Venom 2 is an excellent movie. Spider-Man 2 is an excellent movie,
and I can actually agree with him on this one.
Yeah, and then. Man, you gave Spider-Man 3 an easier pass than I would. It's like a 4, maybe even a 3. It might be 3 too many villains out of 10.
See, I thought about like maybe I was doing it too nice of a review, but I realized it's still better than Eternals.
Oh, God. Oh, shots fired. Shots fired.
That's
right from
that. Okay,
right
that
from
is
the
true.
wrist.
But I think I gave Eternals a 3 too, so I can give Spider-Man 3 a 4.
There you go.
Just for that, it gets one more.
Just for that.
The Eternals.
It's not as bad as Eternals.
Oh man,
that's gonna be our hashtag on this show. Not as bad as Eternals.
Not as bad as Eternals. I got shot in the face. Not as bad as Eternals.
I remember more about that incident than I do the Eternals. So
Yeah.
All right. I gotta say, again, just Spider-Man 1 is a very, very good, very faithful adaptation of source material and character to like the big screen. And unfortunately, I think it's so successful as, going back without the nostalgia glasses. It's down to an down to an 8 for me. It was a 10 in my little 6-year-old eyes, but it's gone down to an 8. And again, an 8's really good. I'd say it's closer to a 7 because I'm, a cynical contrarian, insert buzzword here. But yeah, it's still a great film with a marvelous cast, effects that hold up most of the time, and it's just fun. And I can say the same for Spider-Man 2, except the effects are better, the villain's better, the acting is, everybody's giving it their all, it seems. I'm not going to talk about James Franco. That is a 9 out of 10. And Spider-Man 3, yeah, 3 too many villains out of 10. I liked parts of it, but of course, I'll say, if I like 3 scenes out of a 23 scene movie, no, it's not.
Yep.
It's not very good. And just so you know, I can't remember. I can't remember what I put for the Eternals, but if I put Spider-Man 3 lower than that, I want to give Spider-Man 3 one more point just so it can be a little closer to the Eternals.
Yeah.
But again, kind of looking back, it's like, as much as it gets ragged on, it could have been worse. Could have been so
It could have been
much
Eternals.
worse.
It could have been Eternals.
We keep going to that, but there's worse movies. Even though
I mean,
Eternals is bad.
The disc could have like spontaneously exploded when you insert it into the DVD player.
We could have had the Vulture, and we could have had Black Cat, which was planned. That was planned before they threw Venom into.
My goodness.
But yeah, that's my ratings there. Overall rating for the trilogy itself, factoring in everything, including the rose tinted glasses, bonus points, 8 out of 10. Very, very fun.
All right.
Okay, I think that'll about wrap up for us here. I think we've actually gone a little bit over our time limit. Of course, not counting, what is it? I was going to say not counting things we edit out, which better not be the trivia game, Jack. I know. I listen to the podcast.
What?
I know it.
You listen to our podcast?
I have to listen to my own wonderful voice to make sure I'm keeping it up well enough.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, of course.
But yeah, any more closing thoughts that don't involve tearing apart Spider-Man 3? Or one more jab. One more jab, Joe, if you want.
Oh, one more jab. This is an interesting segue into next week, because Spider-Man 3 is the start of the modern superhero movies, and you can see how it doesn't fit with the other two because it is the start of the modern superhero movies, and we will talk about that next week.
That is a good point, actually. Yeah, wow.
So look forward to that.
When we talk about the Mark Webb's Amazing Spider-Man duology. We'll meet again, Spider-Man!